Hello and welcome to this WSET Explorer webinar called Pour Smarter, the Future of By the Glass Wine with Coravin, who is a bronze partner at WSET. My name is Sophie and I am a member of the online classroom team here at WSET. A little bit about us. So WSET is the world's leading provider of qualifications and courses in wines, spirits, beer and sake. WSET has over 55 years of experience designing and delivering education to professionals and enthusiasts. You can take our qualifications in over 70 countries throughout a network of more than 900 course providers around the world. If you are interested in starting your WSET journey, please visit our website, wsetglobal.com, to find your nearest course provider. Just a few bits of housekeeping before we get started. Just to let you know, this session is being recorded and will be available to watch via the WSET Global Events Hub on our YouTube page. Please can I ask, if you are attending this session in live time, can you post your questions in the Q&A box and we'll try to cover as many as possible throughout and at the end if we have time. Now, to introduce our wonderful speakers, welcome to Greg and to Michael. Greg Lambrecht is the inventor, founder and chairman of Coravin, Inc. He combined his passion for wine with his MIT engineering background and career in medical technology to create Coravin Timeless. It is a groundbreaking device that allows wine to be poured without removing the cork from the bottle. It uses a thin needle and argon gas to enable wine lovers, enthusiasts, and professionals to enjoy any amount of wine without the wastage. Since this original invention, Greg has expanded the Coravin portfolio to include systems for both still and sparkling wines, transforming by the glass service worldwide. More than a decade on, Coravin is now used in over 80 countries and trusted by experts. In addition to his work at Coravin, Greg founded and serves as Executive Director of Intrinsic Therapeutics. This is a medical device company focusing on treatments for spinal disorders. Welcome, Greg. We also have Michael Marr. Michael is one of just 282 master sommeliers worldwide and is the principal of Sommelier On-Demand Hospitality Services. They serve as chair of the board of directors for the Court of Master Sommeliers in America, and he also chairs the Ethics and Professional Responsibility Committee and leads the Governance Committee. They have more than 20 years of experience in hospitality and an academic background spanning Harvard, the Culinary Institute of America, the University of Adelaide, and WSET. They bring exceptional global experience to their work, with careers in places like Treasury Wine Estates, Jackson Family Wines, and boutique distributor Vineyard Road. They are a published writer and speaker and have contributed to academic and trade journals. They previously served as chairman of the Boston Sommelier Society, and he has extensive travels across major wine regions to give a really unique global perspective to our talk today. And this is reflected in the high standard of his work with clients ranging from Fortune 500 firms to private individuals. And somehow, despite this demanding career, Michael stays grounded in Massachusetts, where he enjoys family life, outdoor activities, woodworking, and the occasional cold beer. So welcome, Michael, and welcome, Greg. I will hand over to you to begin your session. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you all for joining from all over the world. It's remarkable to see all the countries that are involved today. I think that what we're going to do is review a little bit of the history of how we got here, how wine and wine storage and wine services has evolved over time, and then talk about the present day situation where I'll turn it over to Michael. So let's see if I can advance. I can. So you've heard our backgrounds. My first wine, I fell in love with wine when I was 16 years old. I drove up to Napa Valley with some friends. I looked older, and I was served my first taste of wine by this fellow who's recently passed away, Tony Peju, and I fell in love with it. From then on out, I've been obsessed with wine, all the different flavors, all the different smells, the grapes, the regions that it comes from, the winemaking styles. It's an infinite life of exploration. I was interested in exploring that broad variety faster than you could if you had to commit to a full 750 milliliters. And so luckily I'd been inventing in medical devices since I was 23. I'd come up with the protective peripheral IV catheter, which is up in the upper left. It's a needle with a catheter that goes into your vein when you go to the hospital. And then a chemotherapy delivery system that's an implant underneath the skin that you would access with a needle over and over again during the course of your therapy. So I'd gotten really good at needles by the time I was in my late 20s. And so what you're seeing on the right side of your screen is the very first Coravin prototype, which I developed in 1999. My wife at the time was pregnant and she stopped drinking, and I was in full-on panic mode. So my life changed from then on out. I had 5 different wines that evening from 5 different bottles, and then put them back into my shelf and had 5 different wines the next night. So I've been exploring at an accelerated rate ever since then. Coravin was founded in 2011. We launched in 2013 in the US, 14 in Europe, and 15 across the planet. We now serve over 1 glass per second, every second of every day. And so Michael is joining. He's got, as you know already, a great experience in wine and hospitality. And so we both feel fortunate to be able to give this presentation.
Well, yeah, thank you, Greg. I think perhaps one of the most important lines on here that got omitted is the fact I actually joined the Coravin team last year as their director of business-to-business sales. And it was really kind of fun because over my career, I spent about 10 years consulting, working with amazing companies, well-established companies, leaders in the hospitality and wine industry. And yet there was always this one little company that was maybe 30 minutes away from me that every so often sent me an email or a text saying, "Hey, could you come on in and check out this project we're working on?" And it just so happened to be Coravin. So though I'm relatively new to the team officially, I've kind of been able to see the growth of Coravin from the outside of the company, from a professional milieu. And now the timing is perfectly ripe for this to really start to change hospitality and the world of wine. So I am super excited to be here. And I'll hand it back off to Greg to talk a little bit about some of the science behind what Coravin does and why it really is critical to really quality by the glass programs.
I appreciate that. So, I'm a med device guy. I'm a physicist and an engineer. So my experience is my wine experience and professional wine experience entirely through the Coravin world. But that job has brought me all over the planet into great restaurants and into wineries and to meet with consumers everywhere. So I saw a lot of countries pop up, and I've been in most of them. There's still a few that I'm going to go to. So we've broken our presentation into sort of the science of wine preservation, and you can see the topics there. I'm going to be talking about the science and a little bit why it matters, and then Michael's going to go into uses of wine by the glass and Coravin in hospitality, but also the current wine situation, which is an interest. We're in a very interesting time for wine in hospitality in the home. So this is Coravin. Our goal is any wine, anytime, and any amount, drink, serve, or sell. That's our goal, to sort of break the connection between the consumption and the bottle, the unit of volume in the bottle. And our view is that at some point, you wind up, no matter what it's stored in, 750, a Magnum, whatever, you wind up drinking it by the glass. And our hope is that any wine is available by the glass. As I mentioned, we're in 80 countries now, which is crazy. And I think we're up to 1.3 glasses per second, which is about 1 million glasses served with a Coravin every 10 days. So it's been much, much bigger than I thought it was going to be. So a little bit on the science of wine preservation. I had the luck to isolate some time and look into the history of wine preservation, and it's a remarkable history. So I'm going to cover that very quickly. You would think with the Coravin guy speaking that this would all be about oxygen, and certainly oxygen is one of the things that can cause wine to go off. But like any chemical, there are all sorts of things that accelerate chemical reactions, including light, heat, and vibration. So it's not just the prevention of contact with oxygen that is important for wine preservation. It's all of these things. And a little bit on the history of bottling. We keep finding older and older wineries and containers of wine. So, right now, Georgia's got the record about 6,000 BC, so about 8,000 years ago. I'm hoping one day we will surpass beer in the first alcoholic beverage ever. But beer, I think, is a little bit older than us. So it started in ceramic or terracotta storage containers. In the second century AD, Romans actually had wine barrels made of wood. And so this is the first reference that I could get to oak barrel storage. These crafty Romans, developed the first glass bottle. The vast majority of their amphora were terracotta amphora, but there is evidence of glass amphora as well. And in fact, the oldest remaining bottle of wine is in a German museum, and it's this bottle here. I don't think I'd be willing to drink it, but it is the very first. So the Romans win there. The other thing that came about was the one actually when glass really became a common form of storage of wine was this guy Robert Hooke in the south of England. So wine was being imported into the UK from Portugal, from Bordeaux, from Spain, and coming into the southern ports in the UK in barrel. And so this guy, Robert Hooke, thought, I'm a glass manufacturer. Wouldn't it be a great idea to fractionalize these barrels and put them into bottles, and then I could sell them off? And so he is the first one in recorded history to do a glass bottle with cork in it, as far as we know. And the volume of his bottle, the 750 milliliters, was determined by the lung volume of a glass blower that worked in his facility. So a single breath into a mold was the goal for mass manufacturing back then. And that's why it's 750 milliliters. Not necessarily the quantity you want to drink, but just what his glass blowers could blow. First canned wines were developed in the United States in 1935. You can see they were fortified wines, generally speaking, or oxidized wines. And that's because the cans were not particularly effective at protecting the wine from oxidation. So cans have improved, but there's still a little bit of a struggle with cans to get every wine to last. Bag and box, Australia, a guy named Thomas Angove, 1965. Bag and box is a great way of storing and preserving wine, keeping it long term, and also preventing oxygen from getting in while you're pouring. It's a very effective system. And a lot of wine is sold in bag and box. It's essentially a Mylar plastic bag that is relatively oxygen permeable. And the wine can last for quite a few months. So then there's the PET bottle, which I'm glad has died a quick death. Plastic is hard to recycle, but it is lighter and it doesn't fracture like glass. And then we've got Frugal Pack, which is trying to use recycled paper, and there's all sorts of alternative things that people are trying to do. The reality is Frugal Pack is a bag and box in a bottle-shaped box. So not a particularly important innovation in my view. So once you've got it in bottle, or how you get it in the bottle matters. You want to try to prevent the end of your production cycle contact with oxygen. You've done everything you can to make this great beverage, and now you want to get it into a container so you can get it out to the market. And so there are techniques that people use to minimize oxygen contact with wine in the winery. People will do sparging, which is essentially flowing nitrogen or carbon dioxide into the wine as it's moving around the winery. And then, of course, in modern bottling lines, what they're doing is they're they're blasting an inert gas into the bottle to clear it of any air before they fill it. So actually, when you've got a closed bottle of wine and you're looking at the headspace above the wine and below the closure, that gas is not air. That gas is not oxygen. That gas is frequently nitrogen or argon that's covering the wine. How you close the bottle makes a big difference. There's been a pretty broad expansion in the variety of different types of cork. There's natural cork, and that includes fully natural, agglomerated, capped composite corks. DM has really taken on the market recently with very consistent cork production and cork taint free. I've still not gotten a TCA tainted DM. There's also screw cap, Stelvin, invented by the French in the 1950s for spirits closure. They're essentially using a metal screw cap, and underneath that screw cap, the thing that's sealing against the glass, interestingly, is saran wrap, PVDC. So polyvinyl dichloridine or something like that. PVDC is saran wrap, and it's one of the most oxygen impermeable polymers we've ever found. Stelvin used cardboard to back that up, and there are other ones that use polyethylene. But saran is great. And then Vinalock, the glass closure. You would think that it's glass on glass, and that's what's closing the bottle. Not true. It's actually ethyl vinyl alcohol, which is the same as a hot glue or hot glue in a hot glue gun, that forms the seal with the glass. It's not entirely oxygen impermeable, but it does a pretty good job. So, of course, people have done some great testing on the oxygen permeability of these different types of closures. And so what you're looking at oxygen transmission rate. The general way to summarize this is that agglomerated and synthetic corks are on the left and screw caps are on the right in terms of least amount of oxygen permeation, and natural cork is somewhere in the middle, is how you can look at it. And so this is a really important decision from the winemaker's perspective. What type of closure am I going to use? Is this a wine that's going to be drunk early, or is it a wine that we want to be able to age over time? There have been innumerable studies of screw cap versus cork by winemakers. And one of the most intelligent things that I've heard to date is from the winemaker at Schloss Gobelsberg, who said, you need to make the wine to the closure. In other words, the amount of sulfur you use to protect the wine, the way that you want it to age and develop, you have to control your winemaking process to the closure that you're going to use. Less sulfur in screw cap, more in agglomerated cork. So once you've got it closed and you want to start selling it, you got to ship it. And so here is where heat plays a really big, important role. So thermal damage or cooked wine. So there's a wonderful company here in Massachusetts that put a GPS tracker and a temperature tracker into cases and watched these cases get shipped from various regions to different places around the world. And what they saw was that these wines saw significant heat 18% of the time in the UK when shipping from France, but 74% of the time when going to China. So much cooked wine has wound up in China that wine raiders in China that I've met say they refuse to taste at the chateau. They only taste when they buy it off the shelf, because how badly it's been treated on the way between wherever it was produced in China determines what the wine tastes like more than the winemaker quite often. So there should be a greater effort in making sure there's great temperature control as you ship wine around the world. And if you look at different regions and how good of a job they do, Burgundy tends to do a very good job of protecting their wines around the world. Bordeaux, also Napa, my home country, not as well in their protection. So temperature is really important. Don't buy an expensive bottle of wine that's been sitting on a shelf in a hot wine store. That's the advice. The other things that affect it, how it's stored. So once it's been shipped, it's now being stored somewhere. All these things play a factor, temperature being dominant, but light as well. If you guys are familiar with Cristal, it comes in this little plastic wrap, or Ruinart champagne comes in a paper overmold. And that's because the bottles are transparent. And transparent bottles actually allow ultraviolet light through, and that ultraviolet light will damage the wine. It's called light strike. And I've tested this myself at home. I put a bottle in the window in a cool room and one in the dark in a cool room, and you can really taste it, light strike. And so wine fridges actually use non-UV producing lights when they have lights in them, and you got to be careful not to have ultraviolet lights. You see this picture in the middle. That is a champagne producer, and you can see there's slightly yellowed lights in their cellar, and that's to make sure there's no UV. Vibration is also important. People will talk about bottle shock. It actually takes quite a lot of vibration to accelerate the chemical reaction, so it's an important thing, but not the most important thing, in my view. And then, of course, there's how it's served. So wine is opened. That actually doesn't allow much oxygen in. And then it's poured. That allows a lot of oxygen in, right? There's a 1-to-1 displacement of wine versus air. And so that allows a lot of oxygen in. And then also how it's closed. So you see these stoppers that are sitting in bottles in restaurants, and people at home have had vacuum systems and that kind of thing, or bottle stoppers. Those stoppers are frequently made from silicon rubber. And actually silicon rubber is the single most permeable elastomer to oxygen that we have ever found. And so while the bottle looks closed with those rubber stoppers, it's selectively allowing oxygen through into your bottle. My recommendation to people is, if you're going to put something back into the neck of a bottle, put a cork in it. Or if you've opened it with a screw cap, use the screw cap to close it again, because that's both of those do an excellent job. And then, of course, we came up with Coravin. Coravin, you get rid of the oxygen transfer from opening, and you get rid of the oxygen transfer from the pouring, because you're displacing the wine using an inert gas. We're not the only ones. There's some great systems out there. Napatech and Enomatic both use a nitrogen gas to push the wine out of the bottle into your glass using one of those machines. And the whole concept of opening a bottle and then sealing it and using an inert gas to displace wine was really the start of wine service by the glass in the restaurant world, with relatively good long-term preservation. Why do we use argon? It's heavy. Nitrogen is not as heavy as oxygen. Argon is heavier than oxygen. It's actually heavier than 2 oxygens. Let's see, what if we use an oxygen remover for the silicon cap? That can work. I don't know why you use silicon if you're trying to avoid oxidation. There are other polymers out there if you could. So anyway, argon's a great gas to use. It's one of the noble gases. It has no smell, no taste, no chemical reactions whatsoever. So it doesn't alter the wine. It's essentially completely inert, sitting on top of your wine when used. We have Coravin Spark. Go ahead.
Sorry, Greg, just a few questions kind of related to your mission and what you're speaking about here. So we have one question that's come in for you. Could you perhaps bring to life a little bit more about the synthetic closures within your personal product, the preservation behind that?
Yeah, Coravin Timeless does not work with plastic corks. Plastic corks do not reseal. That's plastic and elastic, right? So once the hole is made with a needle, the hole stays. You can use it once. You can use Coravin to pour and then leave it upright in your fridge. The hole is very small and argon's very heavy, so it should last. But the second time you use it, if you don't hit the same hole, you'll be spraying wine all over the place. So we developed a separate device called Pivot that works with plastic corks. I've also done some pretty crazy things. Jean-Louis Chave has his selection wine. I love that thing. I love Jean-Louis Chave's wine. And for some reason, he's using plastic corks in there now. So I've actually used super glue to close the hole. I don't know if that's a a universally acceptable way of closing the hole, but super glue is biosafe, right? They use it to close wounds. And I put a drop of it on the top of the plastic cork, and then it lasts for a long time. Kind of funny. Probably on the biosafe side, you could melt wax from a candle over the hole, and that would work as well. So always have a little jar of super glue in my home.
That's really interesting that you do that. Thank you for answering that question.
Yeah.
We have another about where you see the future of the organization. Do you see it with your scientific background becoming the standard in restaurants, or staying more of a premium service because the use of it relies on the skill of a sommelier or member of staff?
It does. We would love to become the standard. And by standard, I don't mean exclusive. There will be others that can be used side by side. And the goal when I founded the company was faster, easier, and more fun. And so I think we have an opportunity on the easier side to eliminate the skill level, to make Coravin easier to use, even more fun to use, so that it can be more broadly used on a wider selection of wines. And one of the steps we took was this system called Pivot, which I'll demonstrate later. That is really easy to use, takes almost no training. And I think there are other opportunities for us to do the same. And we're exploring all sorts of new product development to, in the end, we serve our customers and what they need. And so that's the restaurant customer, the winery customer, the distributor, and the home consumer. And my dream is that we can make one group of systems that work for everybody. So far, so good, but we definitely have an opportunity to improve.
Yeah, on that, just before we go back to your slides, I just have a question from somebody viewing, just so that we're super clear. They say, are they correct in saying cork is a natural breathing product? So even if you put the needle through the top, the cork would reseal itself. They just wanted to check their understanding.
Oh, yes. Yeah, cork is another statement I keep saying, and I'm waiting for somebody to prove me wrong. Cork is the most elastic solid we have found above the surface of the ocean. And so it's made up of wood and little air cells in between. And you can compress it 90% of its volume, and it'll come back to 98% of its original volume. So it is an incredibly elastic thing. And the same way that it's sealing against the inside of the neck of the bottle. When they cork a bottle, they take a big piece of cork and they squish it down and they stuff it into the neck and it expands to seal. That same expansive character is what closes the little hole that we make with the needle. Without cork, Coravin would be nothing. It's a great material.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad we also paused on this slide because, dang, it's the most complicated one I'm showing. It took us 8 years to develop Coravin Sparkling. It was not an easy task. And fundamental to getting it right was remembering high school chemistry. There's this wonderful guy, this wonderful law called Henry's Law of Partial Pressure. And what it essentially means is that gas in a liquid will leave that liquid into the space above until the concentration of that gas is the same in the liquid and in the headspace above. And interestingly, each gas only cares about the concentration of itself. So you can have all the argon pressure in a bottle of sparkling you want, and the CO2 will still leave the liquid until it's balanced above and below. And so when you open a bottle of champagne, let's say there's roughly 5 atmospheres. And sparkling wine will go from 2 to around 7 atmospheres. 2 is the Prosecco level or Satin from Italy. And then 7 atmospheres, the highest pressure we ever measured was in a bottle of California sparkling. Champagne is somewhere in between. But, say you've got an average bottle, it's got about 5 atmospheres in it. You open it up and you pour some glasses. The more headspace you have, the more CO2 will leave the liquid. So the flatter that liquid will become, because you need more CO2 to get into the headspace in order to balance the concentration. And so the atmospheric concentration of CO2 is about 0.0005 bar, right? So it's not helping you out very much. And so you lose a lot. And every time you open it, you release that gas that's gone into the headspace. So the liquid has to do more work of letting more gas out. So the amount left and how quickly your bottle goes flat depends on how empty the bottle is and how many times you opened it to pour it. The great thing about sparkling wine is it has CO2 in it. CO2 is even heavier than argon. And so it does a great job of protecting the wine against oxidation, interestingly enough. And so it's okay to open a bottle and pour it from an oxidation standpoint. It even releases some CO2 while you're pouring, and that helps to push the wine out without air getting in. So that took us 4 years to learn. So it's not so bad from an oxidation standpoint, but from a pressure standpoint, it really matters. How many times you open it and how deep you go into the bottle. And so what Coravin Sparkling does is we've got a stopper that's extremely effective, doesn't use silicon rubber, prevents oxygen from getting in, prevents CO2 from getting out. But then we have a charger that you place on top and push down, and that puts in a very precise amount of CO2 into the bottle so that there's CO2 in the headspace, so that now the CO2 in the liquid has no need to leave, or at least certainly not as much. And we had to choose a pressure that was not so high that it would make Prosecco too sparkly and not so low that it would make California sparkling flat. And so if you charge it, then the CO2 stays the same, and the wine can last for a long time. I've gone out actually now over a year, which is crazy. But anyway, I love sparkling wine, and the way they make it is insane. But serving it by the glass is really, really a challenge until modern systems. So that's the history and challenge associated with getting this great beverage to you by the glass and in the right quality. I'm going to try to turn this over using my skills with a Z to Michael. And I think you now have
There we
slide
go.
control, Michael.
Look at that. All right. So it's good to see that MIT education finally coming through. And I say that only because I went to school up the river in Cambridge. But thank you, Greg, for handing that back to me. And yeah, there's some great questions I'm going to tackle in this section about the restaurant setting and how does Coravin fit in and some economics behind it. But really what it all starts with is the consumer. If you're not making the consumer happy, if you're not meeting the consumer's needs, you're missing out the whole point. I learned very early on in my sommelier career that I could put wines that I like on the menu, but I'm not the one buying those wines by the glass. I'm not the one that's going to keep the restaurant afloat. So I needed to make sure that what I was understanding is what every single guest walking in the door was looking to enjoy. And we've seen a drastic shift in that consumer mindset over the past, more specifically, last 2 years, but really it's kind of been creeping in for maybe the last decade or so, but just at a much slower and quieter pace. And of course, the pandemic shook everything up, and then we kind of accelerated in the years following. And we're trying to scramble and make sense of all these, kind of data points that are all over the place right now. But health and moderation have become really globally in focus. I think the science behind wine is murky at best. You can say, oh, there's this study, or oh, there's that study saying that wine is bad, but then there's this study and that study is saying wine is good. But a lot of these studies ignore the social aspect of wine and mental health, which is another whole thing that's wrapped up in enjoying wine socially. So health and moderation, people are more conscious of it. It doesn't mean they're pushing wine away altogether. It means they're just being more thoughtful about it. Not necessarily a bad thing. Variety and discovery. There is more wine made now at a higher quality level than ever before in the history of the planet, which is great as a consumer. And so these consumers they can't have it all, but investing in a bottle doesn't allow them to explore maybe as much as they would like to in a night. And couple that with health and moderation, 2 glasses to them might actually be a far better experience than having one bottle of the same wine throughout the entire evening, or even 4 half glasses. That again, that variety, that discovery, that opportunity to learn and experience, that is really what consumers are looking for. Adding value. Are you getting a good, not a good deal, but are you getting an experience that is valued by the consumer? Offering a wine that maybe no one else in the state or the country or the continent is offering by the glass. That's a value experience. That's an experience that someone is willing to pay more for because they value the opportunity to take part in that. It's not about getting the best bang for your dollar, your pound, your euro, your dinar, whatever it might be. It's about getting that experience that you truly value as a consumer. Then accessibility. Are you able to you go out to a wine list and you're like, oh, look at all these great wines. I'm never going to drink because I can't invest, you know, X number of dollars into a bottle. But if it were one-fifth that price, I could certainly enjoy a glass of that and be very, very satisfied. There's diminishing marginal returns on a bottle of wine. The first glass, delightful. The second glass, also pretty delightful. The third glass, you're starting to lose a little bit of that delightfulness. You're feeling better. Your senses are kind of dulled. You're not getting as much appreciation of that wine. So really, you got to knock it out of the park on those first two glasses. And so by offering better wine, maybe a little bit of a higher price point, those first two glasses are where that rubber meets the road for a lot of these restaurants. Okay, I'm trying there. Oh, all right, trying to go forward. There we go. So what are consumers paying for wine by the glass? There's this mentality right now in restaurants because of post-pandemic world, great staff, keeping staff is really, really difficult. Consumers are spending. We're trying to figure out what exactly they're looking for in an experience. So everyone just kind of assumes, well, we got to lower our prices. We got to put things on sale. That's just a very common mentality of no one's buying at 20, so we need to discount to 15. That's the wrong move for wine. Because if you look at this in terms of consumer spend, this is over 1,900 participants in our study. This is a significant number of people. There are more people in this study that were buying wine over $15 a glass than there were under $15 a glass. And a lot of the restaurant mindset is to find a cheaper alternative. Maybe take that really fun Assyrtiko that you're pouring from Greece and revert back to the inexpensive Pinot Grigio that is going to have more mass appeal, but isn't going to really give you that vibe, that feel that consumers are looking for. And certainly on the business end of things, it's not going to give you the profit margin that you're looking for. So I think this is a really powerful slide in that there are more people drinking above $15 than there are under $15. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind because you can't put percentages in the bank. You can only put currency in the bank. So you could have a great margin on a lower priced wine, but you're going to have less money to put in the bank than if you have maybe a slightly worse margin on a higher price glass of wine, but you're getting more currency. So you're able to deposit more and keep those restaurant lights open or restaurant lights on and the doors open for a little bit longer. Sophie, I saw you pop up, so there must be a question coming in.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of questions about the cost benefit,
Yeah.
when to ultimately engage with using Coravin products. Is there a recommendation that you'd say sort of start with sparkling, can you
Yeah, there's no blanket kind of solution to this. It's really dependent on every single business model, and what works for one business might not work for another. So, and everyone's like, well, what price point should I start working Coravin in? Well, it all depends on how the velocity is. It all depends on if you're selling 5 glasses of wine, 5 glasses of wine, or 150 mLs of wine, 5 of those. You're selling an entire bottle. You open a fresh bottle the next day. That's great if we can plan that out. The problem is we don't know, or restaurants might close for Monday and Tuesday nights so the staff can have a proper 2-day weekend. Every business is going to be different. So what we've kind of created some calculators, some economic models looking at
using?
how often it's more about waste reduction. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent, but I promise I'll bring it all back around. Anywhere from between 5 to 11% of wines by the glass, no matter what restaurant you're in, are poured down the drain or are oxidized or become unconsumable. That is a huge amount of wine, of money that we are accepting to go down a drain or to be sent back to a kitchen to cook with. So that is a factor that really needs to be taken into account that we don't even think about, because once you pour that wine down the drain and throw the bottle away, it's out of mind. You don't see it except at the end of the month or the end of the year on the spreadsheet where you're like, why are my costs so out of whack? And then you have to go back and look for it, and you can't really find it because you don't have evidence that somebody poured half a bottle out down the drain. So if your costs are out of whack, if your margins are showing you that I should be selling this at a 20% cost of goods, or I should be getting a 74% margin on this wine, and you're not, means you're probably losing a lot to waste. And if you're seeing a big delta in that area, Coravin is absolutely a solution you can consider or should consider, because that waste is the easiest low-hanging fruit to reclaim. Before you even start to think about increasing your wine by the glass options, before you start thinking about premiumizing your wine by the glass, going from Prosecco to Cremant or Cremant to Champagne or whatever it is you'd want to do, getting rid of waste affects every single restaurant, no matter what. So I think if you look at your numbers and you see a big opportunity to reclaim some of that waste, Coravin will pay for itself very, very quickly.
And from
And
a
that's,
cost of use standpoint, just very quickly,
yeah,
sparkling and
please.
pivot are 17 to 20 cents a glass in
Mhm.
cost. So
Yep.
from an overall cost standpoint, they're pretty cheap and very quick to use. So
Yeah.
in terms of price point of where to start using Coravin, it's exactly what Michael said. What wines move and what wines don't. Right. And
And the,
sometimes you have to experiment with that and offer more and better wines by the glass and then see which ones move. And then you'll figure out very quickly which wines to use Coravin on and which ones not.
and I've worked with a couple of restaurants in the past few months who were like, we just want to try this out. It's, they have 85 locations. We want to try this out in 5 to see how it works. Because they decided they were going to pour $125 glass, $125 bottle of Napa Cabernet by the glass, which is about $25 a glass. Certainly, in the wheelhouse, but they realized we really are wasting too much of this wine. So they're going to, they're taking our pivot system for a spin and trying it out. And then they're going to see like, wow, we've really recouped a lot of this. So again, it really depends, from venue to venue. Some people will be looking for more sparkling wines because that's the biggest upside, I think, in the restaurant experience is people are not drinking as much. And the first thing they're giving up on, sadly, is a glass of champagne when they walk in. It's one of the things that the restaurants are seeing, like, well, people aren't drinking champagne anymore, so we're going to then dumb it down. It's this vicious cycle to the bottom of we just need cheaper sparkling. Well, I want champagne. You don't have champagne by the glass, and then you don't sell any more champagne. Then whatever sparkling it is goes to waste. So, but for on-premise operators, flexibility is key. Inventory is great to look at on a wine menu for a guest, but it's terrible to look at the end of the month when you're sitting on product for months, month after month. So giving programs the ability to be flexible, pouring by the glass some wines that are amazing but slow moving on your by the bottle list, clearing out SKUs to have a better balance sheet so you're not carrying as much inventory. That's a huge opportunity for operators and for sommeliers. Premium experiences. We can offer smaller glasses. Not even a 5-ounce glass, but even a 2.5-ounce glass, going from 150 to 90 mLs. And then I can have 2 of those and still be just drinking a little bit more than the usual 1 glass of wine maybe that I'm going to have. So that's a premium experience. That's something that people are willing to pay a little extra for because they're getting more out of that opportunity. They're getting inventory efficiency, as I mentioned, reducing spoilage, getting rid of slow moving but good product, controlling your inventory better. The more wines that you pour by the glass, the better you're going through and looking and seeing what isn't moving from your inventory. And that's really important. If you don't know what's in your inventory, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. And then you're able to refresh your list more frequently. Guests love consistency, but they also love to be surprised in a consistent and familiar space. That's why a lot of these chain restaurants, they are so popular in the United States. And because people want to go in, they want to have a very consistent feeling, but they love hearing about the specials. They love seeing new opportunities. And the more you are surprised in a familiar setting in a pleasant way, the more likely you are to go back. It's like, oh, I want to see what they're going to do next. Seasonal menus. It's hard to think of restaurants not having seasonal menus right now, using the produce that's local, but yet the wine list will stay the same for 12 months. You can change your wine list on a weekly basis now without having to reprint everything because, oh, you're just going to grab a bottle here that's already on the list by the bottle, and you're going to offer it maybe for a week-long special until you've sold half your inventory That looks good for the numbers. Then the guests are going to come back in a week or two and see like, what else are you pouring now? So again, it allows a lot more of that relationship building, which is super important in restaurants because hospitality is relationship building. Hospitality is making that guest feel like you are on their side and looking out for them and able to see what their needs are before they even realize what it is. So that's a really cool thing. And let's start talking about once you get into the guests that do come back, you can start planning for the idea like, oh, well, they usually come in every second Tuesday. I'm going to have a really cool bottle of wine or a glass of wine waiting for them that I know they're going to love, that then they're going to tell their friends about. It's the best word of mouth marketing you can do in this day and age because it costs you nothing, but it is viral. It's absolutely one of those things. So again, on premise, this is super important to keep in mind. Next, a little bit of a
Can I
lag.
just chip in there with a question? Sorry,
Yeah, absolutely.
you've brought to life some really brilliant strategies around cost saving and
Mhm.
innovation in a business. Um, if we go back to kind of like first principles, if that's even possible for like a cost benefit analysis for people wanting to use your project, is there a maximum amount of use per capsule that you can recommend for like a standard glass?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Some of this will depend on the user case, but we usually say it's around, and Greg, feel free to correct me with, a lot more experience, but around 25 to 30 glasses
Amazing,
per
thank you.
capsule.
Using
So
using our pro system. So if you
yeah,
guys are in the trade and you're not using our pro capsules, please
yes,
please use our pro. If you're using standard capsules, it's about 15 to 20
yeah,
glasses of wine. So it makes a big difference to switch up to pro. Contact your
absolutely,
local distributor. The pro is better.
absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
so again, you think about that, it's the cost benefits. Again, as Greg mentioned, you're spending fractions of a euro, fractions of a dollar on a glass of wine, which if you took the price of that glass of wine up by $1, the consumer might notice, but at the same time, everything is becoming more expensive. So a dollar by the glass doesn't do much, but what you have done behind the scenes is guarantee that that wine is going to be fresh, it's going to be sound, it's going to be exactly as the wine was when it was the first glass was poured from it. And that is a benefit that I have found, in my years of consulting, one of the silent killers of restaurants. And I did multiple secret shoppers of this with, some national restaurant chains. The silent killer is when a glass of wine gets poured, goes out to a table. The guest sniffs it, goes, eh, because it's slightly oxidized, because maybe it wasn't open that day, but it was opened a day, maybe 2 days before, and it started to lose some of its profile. And maybe the bartender wasn't able to check the bottle quickly, or maybe it got switched around, or something happened in that very busy environment where quality control flagged, and a guest now got a substandard wine experience. That is far greater a cost to suffer than anywhere, 20 to 25
20 cents
cents.
a glass.
So you're going to lose that guest. The next time they come in, they're going to say, I'm not going to have a glass of wine. I'm going to have a beer. Your check average is going to go down. Your customer satisfaction is going to go down. And so the exchange of 20 cents per glass or 25 cents per glass for that customer to be happy consistently and walk out and say, I'm going to tell friends about this. You can't put a price on that. So that's 100% a great kind of cost benefit analysis there. And I think it is something that we need to be especially mindful of because it's in these little tiny margins that restaurants are able to thrive or kind of fade into oblivion. And it's terrifying because these margins are so razor thin. But a little bit kind of getting back to the slides here on the global wine consumption, generally speaking, it is going down. Again, some of it because of the pandemic, some of it because of demographic shifts, some of it because wine is now being, it's the competition for wine with craft beers, with spirits, with the global exchange of beverages from other cultures is so vibrant that you can go out and have great beverage experiences that aren't always focused on wine now. So wine is in decline, but wine is not irrelevant. That's an important key I want to note is that, yeah, consumption has gone down and it is kind of a longer term trend, but people are still looking for wine. People are still drinking lots of wine. I mean, 200, 220 million hectoliters is a lot of wine to decline. But if you look at the global consumption, it's still I mean, billions and billions of bottles. So it does seem really scary. And again, it's one of these percentages where like, oh no, the world is falling, but there's still plenty of wine to go around. There's still plenty of great wine out there. There's still lots of people consuming it. But it's also a reason why we need to be sharper and focus on our, focus on serving quality wine because there are other options are a lot more available now. So, but out of home wine consumption is actually expected to increase, and why it goes back to that experience. People want to go to restaurants and learn. People want to go out and be social with friends, and they want to have a great wine experience, a great beverage experience, and talk about it. Um, it's one of those things you can't do quite as well in home. Everyone can have a different glass of wine, and I mean, you can with Coravin for sure, and not have to waste it. But a lot of people want to go out to restaurants, and they want to experience great wines by the glass and a little snack to eat, and they don't have to worry about cleaning up or they get a babysitter for the kids or something like that. They still want that. They still crave that. So out of home wine consumption is going up, and I think we're really excited about that because I I still like to go out and have a great glass of wine. And I think Greg also shares that view as well. But looking at the demographic shifts I alluded to earlier, inventory is a big problem right now. And it's like, well, what do you mean that inventory is a problem? Restaurants, sure, inventory, but it's on the list, you can sell it. A lot of wineries, a lot of producers are sitting on far more inventory in terms of um, dollars of inventory versus dollars of revenue has become really untenable. You're seeing now about $1.68 in inventory for every dollar of sales. And that's just really hard for bankers and accountants to look at and go, yeah, this is okay. It's not. We need to get that much closer to a 1-to-1 ratio for wineries and producers to have stability and a long-term projection of success. So
Maybe some
inventory is an issue.
opportunity on the
Yeah,
retail
huge
side, right?
opportunity. Yeah. It's one of those things. Yeah, I mean, you can hopefully, that means we're gonna not hopefully, but most likely we're going to see some of these fringe brands or chateau-less wines where they are just kind of creations by big wine companies start to fizzle out because they're not seen as profitable anymore. And those wines, if they sit in inventory, are a very big problem. So those are the first usually to go. So I think the pendulum will swing back towards a higher quality, lower inventory kind of place in the world, which again is not going to be a bad thing. I think better high quality wine out there, less kind of lower quality commercialized wine isn't necessarily a bad thing for kind of finer dining. But looking at the demographic shifts, the opportunity is getting people who are just entering their higher earning phase, just entering the consumption of alcohol in a more serious manner in terms of enjoyment, rather than kind of just going out and having a couple of pints with some friends. Now it's more of a status. Now it's more of a social experience. So that opportunity to capture that demographic globally and show wine as an important part of the dining experience, as an important kind of social connector for a lot of us is really important because over the long term, you capture those individuals anywhere from between 23 to late 20s, 27, 28, 29, up to about 45. They're going to be wine drinkers for the rest of their lives. It's harder to get people into wine the further in life you go on if you don't have as much grounding. People will drink wine, but they might be more variety associated or brand associated and less likely to explore. But if you get individuals in their late 20s and early 30s, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I want to take wine trips. I want to be involved in wine culture. It's wine this, wine that. It's a lot more of a kind of holistic experience for them, which is super important for long-term success. And how does Coravin, helping to drive business benefits? And I think this answers some of the questions. Increasing premium wine sales, adding fine and rare wines by the glass, being able to provide opportunities for guests to purchase wines at a price point they wouldn't normally purchase wine at, I think is important. Looking at margins, moving from by the bottle to by the glass, getting waste as close to zero as possible. Every restaurant wants that, whether it's in the kitchen or the front of the house. You want no breakage, you want no loss, you want no waste. And then again, consumer satisfaction, super important there. We make sure the guest is happy, and that's where Coravin can provide the greatest potential upside is because happy guests means they're coming back and they're going to keep drinking wine. And then again, some case studies here. I'll kind of go through this. I noticed these, we can make sure that these slides are available. I want to make sure that you kind of get to Greg showing how these work. But just some examples around the world of how Coravin has succeeded in the business context of average revenue increasing, waste going down, and then kind of taking a little simple, if you poured a wine by the glass with timeless, one with pivot, one with sparkling, how much additional revenue, net profit you would gain. And we're talking head count and restaurant profit gains, not a couple of dollars here and there. You can add staff, you can buy equipment, you can repaint, you can refurbish, you can do a lot with $60,000 a year off of just 3 wines being offered. That essentially pays for the systems very, very quickly. All right, Greg, I'll hand this back over to you.
Well, awesome. I mean, Michael, that was an enormous amount of data in a very short period of time. It's worth looking at. It's fascinating to see what's going on in the wine world. One of the things I think is the unique advantage of Coravin, or sorry, not of Coravin, of the wine world relative to other beverages is variety. There's no other beverage that has this level of variety in it. And I think opening that variety up to the consumer is the way that you capture them. That's what's special about wine. Not only that it pairs well with food and that it's great to drink with friends, but it has that insane level or a level of variety of grape, of production, of everything. As you guys know, there's 140,000 different bottles of wine bottled every year. And so there's so much to explore. We have a lot of videos on our website on how to use Coravin. So please go to your country's Coravin, Coravin.com, Coravin.fr, Coravin.uk, co.uk, and look for technique on any of these systems. And we've got a good explanation for you, both on how to save gas as well as how to use it quickly and effectively.
I can absolutely vouch for that. The videos and instructional guides are incredibly helpful. So yeah, please do take a look.
Better than my crazy Zoom focusing. Sorry about that.
No, it was honestly a brilliant demonstration. It really brings everything to life that you've been discussing. Just to kind of bring it round to a close, because I noticed some people are leaving now because we have hit 6 o'clock. Just to say thank you to everybody for watching. We'll obviously send the recording of the session to you if you've tuned in today or if you signed up for the webinar, and you can watch it on our YouTube channel at the end of the week. Just thank you all very much for watching, and please check out Coravin's website. We do have one last important question. I saw a hobbyist write to you to say, can a hobbyist access the pro products, please?
Keep your eyes peeled. The good news is that Coravin Sparkling is the same capsule for everybody, and it's really a lot of gas. In a CO2 you can really pack down in there, which is great. Argon is harder to pack. It's the only downside. No pro capsule yet for the consumer, but we'll see if in the future how we handle it. We may swap to all pro, but we'll see. They're expensive to produce. So we
absolutely. That's music enough, I'm sure, to a lot of people's ears, just that it's a consideration. So thank you for answering that question. And then, there's a feedback poll that's recently come up just to rate the session. And just last but not least, thank you to you, Greg, to Michael and to Coravin. And thank you for being a bronze sponsor of WSET. Last but by no means least, everybody can find out more about Coravin on their website and more about WSET wine qualifications on our Where to Study page on WSETglobal.com. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you're all enjoying a glass of wine today.
Cheers, everybody.
Yes, cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.